2023.
Okay. So do you think things have changed since then, or have they
Oh
gotten
yeah,
worse?
I think as far as the vaccines are concerned, um, as far as the vaccines are concerned, yes, yes. They
Mhm.
still are very nervous about talk. They still are a bit more pushback. Obviously, the midazolam and morphine, forced euthanization of the vulnerable elderly to create the first wave of deaths due to COVID, and remdesivir or Ritavil in France, remdesivir in America. Um, they still don't want to talk about that because that's pure murder.
It is pure murder, and it was obvious right from the start. The first time I spoke with John O'Looney, things became very vivid. And then I spoke to other embalmers from the United States, and it became even more vivid. So to me, it borders on a miracle that no one is going after anyone yet. But I think we'll have to do it with this Nuremberg 2.0 thing.
We have gone after somebody. I supported the Dimmock family. They were not my constituents. They're from South London, Southwark. Their own MP wouldn't write on their behalf to get a coroner's inquest into the death of Derek Dimmock in I think it was June 2020, and he went into a hospice for respite care with gout, and they killed him within 24 hours with midazolam and morphine. He was put on midazolam and morphine, end of life, within an hour of arriving on a Friday night. And we've got all the details. And do you know Professor Sam Ahmedzai?
I think so.
Now, I don't know if you're aware, but in the UK in 2014, we voted in Parliament to end the Liverpool care pathway because we believe that people were being put on end of life treatments that weren't end of life. And Professor Ahmedzai, he chaired the NICE committee that produced NICE Guideline 31, which was the replacement, the safer replacement for the Liverpool care pathway. That was then
Yeah.
replaced on the 3rd of April 2020 by Matt Hancock with NG163, which was the use of midazolam and morphine as a treatment for the vulnerable elderly who were not strong enough to go on a ventilator, which basically condemned them to death. Yeah. And it was a brilliant crime, Reiner, because they were then put down as COVID on their death certificate, there was no autopsy, and the bodies were
Yeah.
cremated within 24 hours, and you got rid of all the evidence. I mean, it was an absolutely brilliant crime. And
Yeah.
well, I wrote to the coroner for Southwark years ago and said, look, I'm writing on behalf of the Dimmock family. I think there might be a problem with NG163, and part of your job is to ensure that you expedite matters that need where it could prevent future deaths if there's a problem with the protocol. And this is one of those situations, I think. And he
Yeah.
agreed with me, and he authorised the inquest, and then mysteriously was forced to resign within 7 days. And I'd also CC'd in the chief coroner for England out of politeness because the Dimmocks weren't my constituents, but it's an issue that affects my constituents because everybody was having it done to them across the country,
Yeah.
and showed him what I'd sent to the coroner for Southwark, and he wrote to parliamentary standards and tried to get me disciplined for influencing a judge, and I was only reminding the judge what the duties were. He tried to get me kicked out of Parliament, the chief coroner for England. So they really were very touchy, and we finally got this inquest in front of a guy called Dr. Julian Morris. It started in March last year. And then how about this for a turn up for the books? So we checked it all out, and a guy called Sir Andrew Dillon was in charge of NICE. And he was in charge of NICE, which is the National Institute for Health and Clinical Excellence.
Well, I think what we really need is a huge international tribunal. And that's what we've been working on for a long time. We're ready to roll, but I think what it really takes is to get me out of here first. So
absolutely. Well, we're in lockstep so many times, and whenever different governments around the world are in lockstep, it's never good for the people, is it? No, no. Whether that's going to be about NG163 or the treatment of COVID patients or the vaccines or net zero, that nonsense. It always costs the people big time. But where are we going to get I mean, quite honestly, the judges the senior judges are mostly corrupt in the UK. I mean, where are we going to get a court to this? Because they've been promoted and promoted.
We can do anything we want. And we are in the majority. So what we're going to do is we're going to start Nuremberg 2.0 based on natural law, just like they did in the original Nuremberg trials. And as far as the procedural law, so that's substantive law, natural law. As far as procedural law is concerned, we're going to use the American grand jury investigation. No, only this time it's not going to be a model grand jury investigation. It's going to be the real thing. And what we intend to do is make this into a real trial, so that all of the evidence that we gather there can be used in thousands and thousands of trials all over the world, so that every single country can hold their own people, those who are involved in this genocide, so that they can all hold everyone in their individual countries responsible. We probably will not even need to question these witnesses over and over and over again. We can just use the evidence that we gather in that first grand jury proceeding, and the jury will be the viewers, of course, just like we intended last time, only that for reasons that I still don't understand, except that Viviane Fischer probably worked for the other side already, for reasons that I don't understand yet, she never actually used the voting tool that one of our IT people had invented for this. But this time we will. It's already set up and can handle hundreds of millions and probably even billions of people if that many people are going to listen and watch. And I think they will, because everybody still wants to know what happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yes, well, unless we hold those to account who've, in my view, probably committed crimes against humanity, it's going to happen to us again, isn't it? It's going to happen again.
You don't stop them. That's why I keep saying that there cannot be peace and there cannot be freedom without justice first.
Yeah, and that comes from truth and transparency as well. There's going to be a massive loss of trust in our institutions when the truth comes out for many people who perhaps haven't woken up yet. And the only way that trust is going to be restored is if very harsh punishments are placed on those who've perpetrated these crimes against the people. And they've generally been in positions of responsibility, haven't they, where they actually had a duty of care to look after the people, and they've done the opposite. I mean, it's very interesting, Reiner, that, in the UK, we had a very famous prime minister for quite a few years, Tony Blair, and when he took power in '97, they'd been the Labour Party had been out of power for 17 years. And the first piece of legislation they rushed to put through, which was not in their manifesto, and they'd never discussed it, but they were all lawyers. Most of that government were lawyers. Blair was a lawyer, and so were lots of people around him. The first piece of legislation they put through, which shocked everybody and, well, surprised everybody, couldn't see why they were doing it, is they rushed, first of all, to take the death penalty out of the Treason Act. I mean, I now believe, looking back, obviously they realised they didn't mind committing treason. In fact, it was high treason because they were paid from the public purse, but they definitely didn't want to hang for it, and they knew they were going to commit treason. Yeah.
Well, this guy, isn't he also Tony Blair? His very weird wife. What was she?
She was
Terry or
Sherry. She was a
Terry?
human rights lawyer. She set up,
Yeah.
I think, matrix chambers, and she made a lot of money out of actually fighting the Labour government. And she was, in the same house as the Prime Minister, who was, I think, telling her what their plans were to amend human rights. And she made a lot of money out of all of that. Fact, they set the whole chambers up on the basis of legislation. I mean, there's not much I don't think there's anything that Tony Blair put through that we'd really want to retain in this country now. I mean, that was he also made the judiciary almost unaccountable to anybody, and anyone who has got power without any accountability. I mean, that's tyranny, isn't it? Really?
That's why instead of the real governments, we now have private organizations, unelected private organizations who run those real governments, and that's why they're called puppet governments. Wasn't Tony Blair a graduate of the Young Global Leaders
Absolutely.
thing? See, that explains it all.
And the Fabian. A member of the Fabian Society. I don't think we've had a Labour Prime Minister who hasn't been a Fabian.
Yeah. Well, so that's where all the genocide comes from, all the eugenics, genocide, etc. They don't have a problem with that, but I think that it's even darker. But I can't yet talk about it. But I've been getting all kinds of very, very important information because everybody has always been wondering who is really pulling the strings from behind the scenes. It's not what's his name? Who's the guy who used to run the World Economic Forum?
It's not Klaus Schwab. No.
Yeah. He's just a puppet. And then they're talking about the black and the gray and the white pope. No. It's others. And maybe it's not even individuals but rather I think it's groups of people who think that they're the chosen people who are totally insane and who think that by killing babies, they are doing the right thing, Satanists, but it's not enough. So what we will do is we will go after those who we can see, and then they
will lead us. They'll lead us up. Yes. I'd already said that many times. That, in my opinion, the puppets and the gophers for these people who are running the world, they're not very brave people, and they won't take much interrogation, Reiner. They're not as strong as you. I mean, the thought of going to prison for them will be horrifying, and they'll soon do anything to get a shorter sentence, and there will be no. There'll be no. I think we have a saying in England: "There's no loyalty amongst thieves." I think we'll find out there's no loyalty amongst Luciferians either.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though they, at least from what I've been reading about these guys, especially the Jesuits, even though they sign weird letters promising that they're okay. If they refuse to follow an order, they're okay with their hands being chopped off, their throats being slit, all these weird things that they sign. But when push comes to shove, I think they're going to cave in despite all of this.
And I'm told that the Freemasons, they have to swear on their children's lives.
Oh, that explains that. Okay.
Which is, that's pretty horrific. I think, I think they all cave. I can think of a fair few. I've known the last 10 prime ministers we've had in the UK, but to be honest, at the moment they're coming and going faster than London buses, I've noticed.
Yeah.
The shelf life of the Prime Minister now is about 12 months in the UK before the people can, I mean, you can't just keep instigating the plans of the World Economic Forum, not what you promised, and think that the people aren't going to hate you pretty quickly. I mean, it's pretty sad just to watch, really. And they can't change the policies, so they just keep changing the human shield. And people see through it even faster. So we've got Andy Burnham now, who came from nowhere. unopposed. So he had a coronation because he's the World Economic Forum's chosen successor to Keir Starmer, who's the most unpopular, in less than 2 years, was the most unpopular prime minister we've ever had in the history of this country. But only until the next one, Reiner. Only until the next prime
Yeah,
minister. It will be even more unpopular quicker, I imagine.
I believe it. I don't like him. I don't think you said the difference is that he has charisma, and that's why probably people will like him, but I only give him a few weeks.
Well, there will be a Burnham Bass. No, well, the problem is he is now making outrageous promises. He's taken over at the very beginning of the summer holiday for MPs, so he's only got between now and the third week in October. Prime Minister Burnham has only got 2 weeks of parliamentary sitting, the first 2 weeks in September, and he's now going out saying things like, "I'm going to cancel the digital ID cards," which two-thirds of the public didn't want, and Starmer said he was going to make them mandatory. He said he's now we're going to start, in a complete U-turn on the net zero, which is rubbish. But he's now saying we're going to drill oil in the North Sea and gas, and we're going to do all that thing instead of just buying all our gas and oil from Norway in the same oil fields that we got, but we weren't exploiting ourselves, which was crazy. So he's doing that, and obviously Starmer had wanted to get rid of jury trials and have political judges, which would be no justice at all. He's now U-turning on Starmer's plan. But I mean, I don't think his masters aren't going to let him do any of this. I think we are actually, he knows he's got 12 months until the people will hate him. So he's going to lie his backside off, get round to October, have their conference, and then call a snap general election, thinking he's going to fool people because they won't have seen through the fact that everything he's saying is a lie. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think we'll have a general election in the next 12 months in the UK, and if not, he'll be gone in 12 months' time, and then whoever successor they put up, and that'll be a shelf life of 6 months. It's ever decreasing. You know, who wants to be the next human shield for the same failed and appalling policy? So it's all happening in the UK. But I think, Ryan, I think we're the head of the snake with the City of London. I mean, whatever corruption's gone around the world, it hasn't been imported to the UK. We've exported it all over the world. We've been doing it longer. I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Um,
Mm.
Certainly, we've exported it around the Anglosphere anyway. So, sort of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and everything that's wrong with our judiciary is wrong with theirs. Um, I'm working with Rupert Lowe in Restore Britain. I think he's the only non-compromised uh, political party. It's only sort of 5 6 months old. We've got more members already than the Conservative Party. We've got about 135,000 members. Um,
Wow.
but I mean, obviously, he's getting no publicity in the mainstream media because he's not in the club. Um, we'll have to see. It's going to be a struggle, but we've got to do it because I think it's beholden on us to try and have a peaceful revolution, and I think Rupert's the only chance we've got. I mean, if the other alternative is rather more unpalatable.
That's what a lot of my British supporters are writing me, that they believe in him rather than in Nigel Farage. But he used to be a member of Reform UK, didn't he?
He did, but I've known him for about 4 years, and I told him and Ben Habib before the 2024 election, I said, "You won't last 5 minutes with Nigel Farage," and they were both. He
Uh-huh.
kicked them both out within 6 months of the general election. I mean, I know Nigel for, I don't know, 12 or 14 years. I know he's compromised. I've had plenty of conversations with him where he's shown that he's compromised. I mean, when I'd run out of MPs to stand with me to stop the babies and infants being jabbed with the COVID jabs in the UK, if I'll be able to prove, which I did on my own in the end. I went to see Nigel Farage and Aaron Banks. He wasn't an MP, but he was very high up in reform, and he got his own TV show on GB News. And we met, of course, in a pub in Mayfair, and I gave Farage an hour and a half about the euthanizing the vulnerable elderly and the vaccine harms and everything in January 23. And at the end of it, when I asked him, "Will you help me and we can stop this?" he just turned to me and said, "Andrew, I will not be speaking about the vaccines, and if you know what's good for you, you'll shut up about them." So he knew, and he wasn't willing to.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's not leadership, is it?
Well,
That's not leadership. That's not leadership. There's another word for that, and people know. And that, and for me, that eliminates you from ever being able to be prime minister if you're going to come to that conclusion.
I agree. Absolutely. So his only claim to fame is getting Britain out of the EU.
And he didn't. He didn't. Um, I led the Leave campaign for the East Midlands. The Leave campaign was the nominated campaign, and we wouldn't have Nigel Farage anywhere near us. He was not in the. He was running a different campaign, but he was not the authorised campaign. And it's interesting that I knew we'd won, and I was heading down to London on polling evening before the votes were announced, but I knew we'd won from the turnout. And I heard on the radio that Nigel Farage had already conceded we'd lost. Now, that's very strange. And I warned Nigel 3 years ago about the European Defence and Securities Union, which both the Labour Party and the Conservatives wanted to join. And I said, look, we've got to stop this. You know, this is going to give the EU full control of military procurement, our Army, Navy, Air Force, MI6, MI5, GCHQ, our nuclear deterrent, and our local police force. Ultimately, if this is what the deal is, they're only offering that to EU members, and that's the only thing we're going to get offered. And I said, we need to keep out of it. And he said to me again, he said, Andrew, Brexit's done. We don't talk about it anymore. Well, I mean, you can't have that attitude. I mean, we're closer to the EU now than we have been for a very long time. We're still giving them lots of money.
Yeah.
And he said to me, Andrew, he said, the problem with you is, I said, I've realised that you're always looking for a fight. I said, no, Nigel, I'm not always looking for a fight. But unlike you, when there's one got to be had, I don't run away from it. And he didn't really like that. But that is very true. So I'm not, so no, I've got no time for, and he took £5 million from Chris Harborne, which is, I mean, I think Mr. Harborne is basically a representative of the people that we haven't named or we don't know the names of. He might be a billionaire, but he's a gopher for those people, and I know a few of those. Yeah. And he's taken another £1 million off him as well. And to be honest, that's the thin end of a wedge. So Nigel's going to face, he's called a by-election in his own seat to try and satiate the demand from the public for a by-election. He's going to face another one due to standards breaches in Parliament before Christmas. And that requires 10% of his electorate to go into a polling station and vote for it after having just had a by-election. But the major parties aren't standing in that. So he's up against Count Binface and the monster raving Looney Party. So I don't think Farage can survive this the next 12 months. I think there's too much he's got too much baggage and too much is going to come out on him, quite honestly. So the danger point is that as reform support goes down and Restore goes up, there is a crossing point when we're both on about 15%. And if Andy Burnham hadn't been seen through, that's probably the best time for him to call a general election.
But you would not, Rupert Lowe and you would not even think of forming a coalition government with him. Nigel Farage.
Well, we might do that. We can't rule anything out, but it was very difficult. I mean, he's taken the former Tory vaccine minister, Nadeem Zahawi, into his party at the top. I mean, Farage did make some, I mean, he knows about the vaccines. But his policy was he was asking some questions a couple of years ago. Now he's taken the man who rolled out the vaccines under the Tory government to the very top of his leadership. No doubt he'll be taking lots of money because of that from Big Pharma. Well, I mean, Big Pharma won't be giving Restore Britain any money, I can assure you.
No, obviously not.
No. So that makes it very hard for us to do a deal. But I mean, that's only the same as any of the mainstream parties at the moment. I mean, they're all in the club. Um, they're all in, and I think they would have a rainbow coalition to keep us out. You know, if we got
That's
49% of the seats and they got 51 between them, I mean, the Greens and the Conservatives and the Socialists and the Monster, they'd all be in there to keep us out.
Yeah, well, they're doing this everywhere throughout Europe, both in France and in Germany. They're very much afraid here in Germany of the eastern states breaking away. The first one is Sachsen-Anhalt, which where they will.
What separation again? We only just got you back together.
Yeah, but they wouldn't mind putting up the wall again. This time
Yeah.
facing the other way, though.
Yes, I understand. I understand. I had an interesting conversation. I spoke at the Truth and Freedom Festival in Thetford last weekend. An Italian lady came over from is it the VV party, their sort of freedom, and she said that in Italy, doctors and nurses who lost their license for criticising the vaccines are getting their jobs back. Well, that's certainly not happening in the UK, I can assure you. They're still striking people off who ask any questions.
Well, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting development in Italy because it's not happening in Germany either, and as far as I know, it's not happening in France either.
Yeah.
So maybe there is something to the rumor that Meloni is the one who is really getting along with Trump very well, despite all appearances.
Yes, that may be. That may be. Um, I mean, it's interesting that again, it almost in lockstep. I mean, Australia, we had Starmer, I say the most hated prime minister in our history, and then in Australia they've got this Albanese character, and he's the most
Yeah,
hated.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's very interesting that we've got the and. I don't think it really matters. And Merz is in Germany is very, very unpopular, and he's supposed to be a conservative. It, you know, I don't know.
Well, he's not. He's in this coalition government, and it doesn't make a difference if you're in this coalition government, if you're a conservative or if you're a social democrat. They're all the same. That's why the AFD people, one of their leaders is a guy by the name of Björn Höcke, whom they vilified and tried to make look like Satan, but he's a really smart and pretty cool guy. And he calls all of the other parties correctly the cartel parties, because that's what they are. It's a cartel. They're all the same. It doesn't make a difference. There's 5 parties, or maybe even 6, but they're all the same. It doesn't matter if you vote for any of them. They're all the same.
We call it the uni party, and the analogy I use, Reiner, is that they're all controlled by the same people, and basically it's like going to a train station, and they're all different trains you can get on, but they're all going to the same destination, but they're just going there at different speeds. Um,
Mhm.
and that's I mean, this thing about right and left, quite honestly, the left and right, I mean, that's the illusion of choice. Um, it isn't about
Yeah.
right and left anymore. We're not in the politics of right and left. In the politics of right and wrong, of
Mhm.
humanitarianism or libertarianism and authoritarianism. And I never realized what a libertarian I was until I saw how authoritarian the government was becoming.
Yeah, and it didn't start with COVID. It was just that COVID was the turning point which woke a lot of people up, including myself. I mean, I had known as a lawyer, and I'd been working around the clock more or less, so I didn't really have any time to think. But as a lawyer, I had noticed that there was something wrong with the judiciary, and I have seen this for over 15 years before COVID. But COVID, of course, um, it kind of took everyone's masks away. The judges, the judiciaries, the politicians, the mainstream media. It became so obvious, at least to our side of the fence. But so many on the other side of the fence still don't want to see what's going on. That is the weirdest thing.
Yeah, the phrase I use is that COVID slapped me wide awake, whether I wanted to be awake or not. There was no choice. Um, what I've looking back over various legal cases I've been involved in fought against, I think that my own legal team were on the other side, working against me.
Oh, what did they do?
Oh, they don't use the right evidence. They don't press points they should press, and yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Hmm.
And I think that's pretty endemic in our system. And that's why these lawyers always tell you, oh well, we did expect it. It wasn't the decision we were looking for, hoping for, and well, litigation's a lottery. Well, if you get to the truth, it shouldn't really be a lottery, should it? You know?
No. Well, in my case, it is now absolutely clear that the people who I was up against, the people on the Corona Investigative Committee, but also the judges and the prosecutors, they're all working for the deep state. They're all working for the German Constitutional Protection Agency, which is our domestic intelligence service, like MI5. So they're all under control. There are, however, exceptions to this. There are still some judges and prosecutors who do want to uphold the rule of law, who know exactly what's going on, but they have remained silent because they're scared. But now we've reached a point at which, have you heard of this Pastor Martin Niemöller?
Yeah.
Towards the end of, yeah, you know who he is. So towards the end of the war, or maybe right after the war, he looked back and he said, I think this is a little poem.
It is a poem. He said that first of all they came for the unionists.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they came for the Social Democrats, and I did nothing because I was not a Social Democrat. Then they came for the Catholics or whatever. Then now they're coming.
Yeah.
Now they're coming for me. Who will help? Oh, there's no one left. Yes.
Exactly. And this is what many of the systems lawyers are beginning to understand, finally. But only those who do not have frontal lobe ventilation.
Yes. Well, if they start to think the truth's going to come out, they're going to be a panic, isn't there? Because they're all going to want to be on the same side. Same with our mainstream newspapers and broadcasters. I mean, they've hung themselves by the way they've dogmatically stuck with the narratives that were now most people could see are false. In fact, I would say as far as the vaccines are concerned in the UK now, it's only the mainstream media and the politicians that are holding the line. I think 85% of the public know. They know.
Yeah.
90% of the doctors and nurses won't take the boosters now, the COVID boosters, or the flu shot, because that's got negative efficacy as well. And we just had a very interesting legal case in the UK about, I don't know, a month or so ago. I tried to give evidence for him. He was a veteran who in October 2022 he went from Wales, he shut down a vaccine centre in Bristol and said, you're killing people. You're killing people with these vaccines. And he was accused of assaulting a emergency worker, which I imagine is either a doctor or a nurse, which is a very serious offence in the UK. And his case has been put off and put off. Asim Malhotra was going to give evidence for him. Loads of people. I was going to give evidence. John O'Looney was going to give evidence, I think. And eventually the judge decided it was going to be heard at the Crown Court in Bristol. Because he was a veteran, he said, and he got PTSD, he said he didn't have to go in the dark and he could have a Mackenzie friend, a paralegal with him. And then he said, no witnesses. Then he threw the paralegal out and he put him in the dock and he tried everything he could. But it was in front of a jury, Reiner. And ultimately, despite everything that the judge did, the jury found him not guilty. And that tells me that the majority of people in the UK overwhelmingly know that the vaccines hurt people. And then the judge can say what he wants, but the people know what really happened. And that's why he walked out innocent. And the judge, we've managed to get a crime number for malfeasance in public office and attempting to pervert the course of justice against the judge now. But I don't think there's any appetite from Bristol police to investigate the judge, unfortunately.
Oh man. But as you can see, there is definitely a big shift going on right now. I've been waiting for this, but everybody who's writing to me is telling me the same. They can feel it, they can sense it pretty much everywhere in the world. And this has not only to do with people beginning to rationally understand what's been going on. That is probably not what's really going on. But what is happening is the I don't know how to say it because I'm as a lawyer, I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in a higher power. I do believe, to me, the view of the world as the North American Indians hold it, that makes sense. They believe in the Great Spirit, which is in everything, which connects us with each other and everything. That's what makes sense. And this higher power is a good force, and it has energy. And that is what seems to be working now. That's what, I mean, I don't care if you call it God or whatever. I call it the Great Spirit or the higher power. But it is something that people are sensing, and it's lifting them up, and it's making them not necessarily understand rationally what's been going on, but they're sensing that something is terribly wrong, and they don't want to go down that route any longer.
Yes, I think people are realizing we are also in it's a spiritual war, deeply
Mhm.
spiritual war, and I mean, in that case, I mean, it actually is an amazing time to be alive because, you know, it's
Yeah,
it's the Alamo, isn't it? You know.
it is. Yes, it is
Well, that's why we
there.
need that's
Yes.
why we need you out of prison doing what you do best. And unfortunately, I think the German authorities are and others are well aware of your abilities, and that's why you're in prison still. So, what can you tell me about your prospects for improved circumstances?
Well, here's the thing. When I finally realized, this is on May the 3rd of 2024, when I finally realized that who I was really up against, not against the legal system. I was up against those who have brought the legal system under control and who are giving the judge and the prosecutors orders. And this is on May the 3rd, and that's because on that day, the judge who ran out of arguments and whose case had just imploded, the original case that I had taken out an illegal loan. But of course I hadn't, because the loan that I and my former co-host Viviana Fischer had taken out, they were perfectly legal. They were transparent. They were open. They were in the books of the Corona Investigative Committee. And of course, I would have paid back. We took out the loan in order to protect some of the money donations from getting seized by the government, because that was imminent. So that's why Vivian and I decided we'll take out a loan. We found out about the imminent seizure by an American journalist by the name of James Henry. He had just come back from an interview he did with Susharit Bhakti in Kiel, which is up north in Germany. And the day after, he had come to Berlin to do an interview with me. And that's when he told us. And that's when Viviana and I decided we're going to have to do something to protect at least part of the donations. And that's why we both took out a loan. I had no problem with that because I had still some real estate. I also had lots of cash, actually. But I wanted to protect that money, so did she. So we took out this loan in which the people who then came after us, first government, the deep state, wrote the German Domestic Intelligence Service, CPA, wrote a letter to the Göttingen DA's office, bluntly asking them to invent criminal charges against me, either fraud or something along these lines, so that they would be able to indict me on this and take me out of circulation so that I wouldn't be able to run for public office. Because back then I was still the leader of that political party, Die Basis, the basis, and they had had me run for the chancellorship in 2022, I believe. So, but the one law-abiding senior prosecutor who was in charge of this case. She had seen, obviously, many of the shows that we had done. So ultimately, on June the 14th of 2022, she decided to not even start a criminal investigation, and she explained to the German deep state, to the Constitutional Protection Agency, the equivalent of the MI5 in England. She explained to them that she wouldn't follow any orders that are illegal because there was nothing criminal about anything I had done. So she shut down the case and had the files archived. 2.5 months later, the deep state approached two of the former members of the Corona Committee, really stupid idiots. One of them had always worked for the deep state, for the Constitutional Protection Agency, unbeknownst to me, of course. And they turned them, and then they had them write a criminal complaint claiming that I had stolen money and that I had, for part of the money, I had a loan contract for part of the money, but that I had always intended to never pay it back. They never investigated anything. The case landed again on the desk of that senior prosecutor, but she wasn't able to rule on it because before she was able to shut it down once more, they transferred a young prosecutor from Hanover to Göttingen, changed the file number so that now he would be in charge and not her anymore. And then he started the proceeding. He never investigated anything, despite the fact that the leading police officer, when he looked at the criminal complaint, he decided there's something really, really strange about it. And in the case file, it explicitly said that all three, two prosecutors and him, had agreed that they needed to interrogate the people who had filed the complaint, plus Viviane Fischer, who had given them the tip. But it didn't happen. So this guy wrote an arrest warrant, and then they had me abducted.
That's the time gone. That was the topic. They had to cut it. Well, as you will have heard, the call with Reiner Fuellmich in Bremervoorde prison, line went down just as I was being told by Reiner about how his charges against him were concocted and he had fallen victim of the misuse of the judicial system in Germany. Then the call dropped, and unfortunately, he's unable to call me back to continue that conversation tonight. I'm going to try and speak tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow morning, and we'll have a call on another number, which is also authorized and which the German prison authorities will not have shut down yet. So you can come to your own conclusions. Perhaps it was a problem with the phone systems. I don't think so. I don't really believe in coincidences. Come to your own conclusions. Thank you very much for listening to us.